In the summer, we can see one of the most familiar groups of stars in all the sky, the Big Dipper. The Crow people do not tell stories in the summer, and so it is that only in the deepest, coldest time of winter that the following story may be told. Listen now to the story of a boy, of the healing powers of the Sweat Lodge, how a loving family came to be, and how it is that they now live in the sky as the stars of the Big Dipper. And you will learn about the constant star, the star most people know as the North Star.
Palejve hawata amor bigilishtelak ichivish biguk.
Once there lived a young woman who was with child. When the baby was born, the young woman didn't want him. She took her son far out into the prairie, placed him on the prairie grass, and left him there, just left him there, a newborn. They say that not long after that, some buffalo bulls came along. There were 7 of them. They saw the child lying there. They went close to the baby and surrounded him. They sniffed him and nudged him. The leader of these 7 buffaloes was called Bishewa Lachash, Crazy Bull. Crazy Bull gently scooped up the boy and held him for a moment. He tossed him into the air, but the baby was not hurt, for when he landed on the ground, he began to crawl about. Another bull came forth and, like the first, used his horns to toss the boy into the air. This time, when the boy landed, he could stand up and he could talk. There was yet a 3rd buffalo that did the same thing, and when the boy landed, he had turned into a young man. And they say they named him Bijeshigagash, Buffalo Boy. The bulls came to love the boy, really loved the boy. Those 7 buffaloes took the boy with them. They cared for him. They watched over him and taught him many things. They warned him, saying, "There is a bull that is very mean. His name is Humachesh, Connected Bones, and he has several pretty wives. They will offer you water, and when they do, you must refuse to take even 1 drop." One day, Connected Bones' youngest wife came to Buffalo Boy, and as he had been told, she offered him water. Buffalo Boy refused to drink any water. He turned away and said no. She took her finger to the water and then placed a small drop on Buffalo Boy's lips and said, "Well, you drank my water anyway. Now I will tell my husband." She ran to her husband, told him what happened, and Humajish was filled with anger, maybe because it was his prettiest wife. At once he went to the lodge of Buffalo Boy, called to him, "Buffalo Boy, get up, come outside." And they say the 7 bulls came to the aid of Buffalo Boy, telling him, "Stay inside the lodge, we'll take care of him." But they could not protect the boy, and one by one, Humajish broke their bones and left them dead, all 7 of them, dead, their bodies lying here and there on the prairie. Again, Humajish called to Buffalo Boy, "Come out!" Buffalo Boy appeared at the door of his lodge. He had an eagle feather tucked to the back of his head, and he had his bow and arrows. They say that Humajish started pawing and snorting, and then charged the boy. But when the huge buffalo passed under him, Buffalo Boy jumped into the air and twisted his body, aimed his arrow, and shot the bull in the rump. That was one of the weakest parts of the buffalo. They say that the bull started wallowing and snorting and charged the boy a second time. But Buffalo Boy did the same as before. He jumped into the air just as the bull charged him. He spun around and shot his arrow into the bull's collarbone. That is another weak spot. When the arrow struck, the bull fell dead. They say that the boy took all 7 buffaloes into the sweat lodge, and there all 7 bulls were healed. When they came outside the lodge, they knew that Buffalo Boy had great powers and that he was strong. They knew it was time for him to go back to his people. And they said, "But we want to continue to watch over him. We need to become something that will watch over the boy and all of the Crow people." The 7 buffaloes agreed that they needed to become something that would last forever. They talked among themselves. One of them said, "Why don't we become trees?" One of them said, "No, the crow chopped the trees and make fire. They use the trees for firewood." One of them said, "Why don't we become a river?" And one of them said, "No, the river can die, especially in hot weather. The river can dry up." One of them said, "Why don't we become a mountain? Mountains last forever." And one of them said, "No, the rain wears away the mountain. In time, even the mountains disappear." There was one who had been looking at the sky, and he said, "For as long as I can remember, there have been stars. Why don't we become stars and watch over the crow?" The 7 bulls went to the sky and became the 7 stars in the Big Dipper. And they say Buffalo Boy went back to his mother. His mother didn't want him and he left. And they say he went to be with his buffalo family and that he became the constant star. The star some call the North Star. When you look at the Big Dipper and the North Star, remember this story of a family, held together by their story and their love for one another. And that is the end of the story of the 7 bulls and the Buffalo Boy.
The story of the 7 bulls can only be told in the coldest, deepest of winter. They are the 7 stars that you know as the Big Dipper and are best seen in the summer. They appear in the northeast in spring, and night after night over the summer, they gradually move to the northwest. This group of stars has drawn the attention of many peoples for thousands of years. Listen and watch now as we add some stars to these 7 bright stars to see the Great Bear and learn 2 new words, Constellation and Asterism.
Here we see the 7 stars that make up the Big Dipper, but they are just part of a bigger group of stars that make a constellation or picture in the northern sky. When a group of stars makes a recognizable pattern or picture of something, we call the picture a constellation. We can follow the stars to see a huge bear in the sky. Begin here at the tip of his nose, over his head, along his back, over his rump. Here we see his hind legs, under his stomach. Here his front legs, his sharp claws, then up to his neck and on out to his nose. You are looking at the constellation of Ursa Major, from the Latin words that mean the Great Bear. In some constellations, certain stars stand out more than others. They are called asterisms. The Big Dipper is an asterism that is made from the specially bright stars of the constellation Ursa Major, or the Great Bear. These 7 brightest stars of the Great Bear are the stars the Crow people call the 7 Bulls. Notice that these 2 stars point to Buffalo Boy, who is seen as the constant star. The star many people call the North Star or Polaris. So for the Crow people, the 7 stars and the constant star make a Crow constellation. You can go out on any starry night, and if you look long enough, you can see a picture of something in the sky. You can make up your own constellation to represent you or your family. These star pictures are made by connecting the dots, or in this case, connecting the stars. In fact, the word constellation comes from Latin words con, meaning with, and stella, meaning stars. However, a constellation is much more than a picture in the sky. The dark spaces between the stars that make the pictures are also a part of the constellation. When astronomers point their telescopes to the dark places, they see thousands of stars, star clouds, and even distant galaxies like this. Galaxies are large groups of stars, gas, and dust held together by gravity. And to help us find certain stars and constellations, we can now look at a star map. Just as explorers and geographers needed and made maps of our Earth, instead of pointing their telescopes here and there, they needed the stars to have an address just as you have an address. They gave the star map imaginary lines just like our Earth. Using these lines, they measured the space that Ursa Major took up. Then they measured the space for each of the other constellations. And this went on, and after a time they had drawn lines around all of the known constellations. But there was a problem. Some parts of the sky didn't have constellations. There were leftover spaces in the sky. There were stars in the leftover places that didn't make a picture and couldn't be called constellations. So, guess what they did? The astronomers just made up a bunch of new constellation areas. They gave the new constellation areas names. Many of the new constellations didn't look anything like their names. But now, when an astronomer wants to look at a star or focus a telescope in the dark spaces in order to see the deepest, farthest places in the sky, she can locate it on a star map, just as you can locate a street in your town or city from a map. She uses a computer, types in the star's address. Her telescope then maneuvers around, points it to that part of the sky, and there it is. Our sky is now broken up into 88 sections showing the 88 official constellations, old and new. Just as some days you can see pictures in the clouds, on clear nights you can look at the stars and make up your own constellations using any stars you wish. Gazing at the stars on a summer night, we can easily see the 7 bulls as they guard over Buffalo Boy and the Crow people. We see them together, a family forever, just like the stars.